I finally saw the Barbie movie. I'm very conflicted. Like the whole time I'm like, I think I'm enjoying this. No, I'm not. I think like visually it is stunning. It's really, really cool. I love the world that they've created. You know, they really take the idea of Barbie, like the things I grew up with. I loved the costumes, the set design, the way they moved. Like even if she tips over in the grass, it's like a Barbie. Like it's very detailed in that aspect. And I loved that. I'm just trying to start with like the positive before I move into like my criticisms, I guess. There's a lot of really funny moments. I will say though, and this is on me, I kept like turning and looking at Boy Walker being like, what the hell? Because I was thinking it was a kid's movie. So like there's a moment where like Ken and the other Kens are like yelling at each other on the beach. And he's like, I'm going to beat you off. I'm going to beat you off. And I'm just like thinking, if I had kids and I brought them to this movie, I would not want them running around saying that they're gonna beat each other off. And then later I realized it was a PG-13 movie. So that's on me. But I will say if you have kids, it's more for like teenagers and adults. Yeah, there was a lot of really great moments, but it was weird because I didn't know exactly who it was for. And I think that's ultimately my problem with the Barbie movie. I think they could have kept the world the same. They could have almost kept the basic plot the same. But if they turned down the on the nose preachiness, maybe like 35%, 40%, it would have been way more enjoyable because like I'd be like really laughing at stuff. I'd be like, oh, that's really funny. That's really funny. And then I get hit with another like, did you get it? Did you get it? What we're talking about? It's patriarchy. Why can't you show, don't tell? Like to me, that's one of the biggest parts of filmmaking and writing. In the opening monologue, you have Helen Mirren narrating. And even, I think it's like within the first like 2 minutes, they talk about feminism and patriarchy and women's rights. It's the same issue I have with any content that has an agenda. I grew up with a lot of Christian movies because I was raised in the church. And even then, I felt like movies are held back when you have to push your agenda, when you can't just tell a story and let the audience come to their conclusion. Like have a movie about forgiveness and second chances and grace and beauty and wonder and mystery and all that stuff. You can have all that stuff, but a little bit more subtle, and it makes people more likely to want to see it. Same thing with, you know, a movie about feminism and patriarchy. If you want to make a movie about girl power, that's great. Like Barbie was about that. That's the thing, is a lot of people are upset about Barbie, but like that was kind of the point. Back in the day, was it Ruth Handler or whatever? Like she made a doll that was supposed to be like for her daughter, Barbara. She named Barbie after her. She wanted her to have a doll to play with that, you know, she could look up to. I think originally Barbie was just like a hot model. So to say that like, oh, she was always an astronaut or always these aspirational things, that's not necessarily true. That was something that developed over time. But Barbie's intent became that she was everything. You know, the doctor, she was the sanitation worker. Well, I guess actually I'm curious if they had a sanitation worker Barbie, because I think that would show you one of the issues I have with feminism. Oh, we want equality, but we only want equality in the cool, like the cool high profile jobs. We don't want equality in every field, like crab fishing or I don't know, being a lumberjack. We just want to be like astronauts and stuff. You know, I was raised on Spice Girls. Like I loved the whole girl power thing. I believe everybody should feel empowered. That was not my problem. My problem is that it felt like they thought we were dumb. So that was another reason why I thought maybe this is for kids, because they kept hitting us over the head with stuff like that and being like, oh man, it's so hard to be a woman. Oh, patriarchy, patriarchy, patriarchy. And then a lot of the men in the movie were very, you could tell they were written from the perspective of somebody who is a modern, I don't know, third or fourth wave feminist, whatever the wave we're on. They come to the real world, like Barbie and Ken, and every guy suddenly is just like, hey, lady, like slapping her on the ass. Yes, there's creeps in real life. I've dealt with them too, but they're not every guy. They tried to have an arc with the Kens, because the Kens in Barbie Land are kind of seen as like second-class citizens. They kind of just exist on the periphery, but they're showing how the Barbies are like the Supreme Court judges. They've won all the Nobel Prizes. So that's why when Barbie comes to the real world, she's so surprised that there aren't, like, you know, women construction workers. Like women aren't everything, because in Barbie Land they are. And they're trying to make a statement, but I feel like they fumble it. So you have the Kens who basically are like just kind of accepting that they're second class and that they don't really have like an identity. Like Ken's whole job is not, he's not a lifeguard. Like when Ken came out, people mistook him for a lifeguard or whatever, swimmer. He's none of those things. He's not even a surfer. He's beach Ken. So I did think that was funny that in the movie they keep talking about how his profession is just beach. It was a very funny movie. So that's why I'm still so conflicted, because I liked a lot of it, but then I couldn't stand some of it. And it's like, it lowered the enjoyment for me. And that sucks, because I feel like it was so close to being like a really, really enjoyable movie.
Disappointed!
first of all, Ryan Gosling, everybody, I feel like Margot Robbie, like they did a great job. The acting in this movie was really, really good. The Ken aspect, they seem like they are empathetic to him because they show that he's just doing it because Barbie kind of treats him like shit. Like Barbie is like, oh, great, Ken. Like, I guess they're boyfriend and girlfriend, but they're not really like he adores her. He just wants her attention. He just wants, he does all this flexing and stuff to get Barbie to notice him. And she's like, cool. Like she just kind of seems not interested at all. He just wants to be loved. So at least they acknowledge the humanity of Ken and the Ken dolls and why they might have a valid complaint. And they try to make a parallel saying, this is how women are in the real world. And that's where they kind of lose me a little bit because then they go at the end, there's a whole thing where like the Kens basically, once Ken and Barbie go to the real world, Ken sees the patriarchy and he's like, oh man, in the real world, men are in charge and this is great. And he learns about like, you know, being a bro and like being a lot more masculine and stuff. So he brings that back to, you know, Barbie land. So when Barbie comes back, it's like now all the men are in charge and all the Barbies are like bimbos and they're just serving the men. And Ken's like, welcome to my Ken Dojo Casa house. I'm like just saying house a million times. You know, I know a lot of people have just been like, oh, it's woke, don't see it. It is woke, but it's also, there's a lot of really funny observations, really funny jokes and bits. I think that's the biggest shame for me. It's when I see something where I'm like, God, if you just had like an editor, it seems like everybody involved in the process thinks the same way. So they didn't see a problem with it. Whereas for me, I don't know if, I mean, not that I let my kids see the movie anyway, because it's not meant for kids, which I learned after the movie, but I don't know if I'd feel comfortable with my son seeing that. I don't want him to watch something that makes him feel like he's shit. So for me, it's not that I don't believe in girl power. It's that I believe in power for everybody. And I feel like the movie was very much girls, 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 which is great. Girls need encouragement too. But then it kind of dismissed some of the legitimate complaints that men have. And it also completely shot itself in the foot. Ken's turned Barbie Land into the patriarchy. Which is also, there's like a funny joke in there where Ken thought that the patriarchy meant that horses, like men and horses ruled the world. And once he realizes that it's not horses ruling the world, he's kind of slightly less excited about it. Even then, like he's just trying to get Barbie's attention, but he thinks that's the way to do it. Then there's like this whole battle. They try to get the Kens to, I won't spoil everything, I guess. They trick the Kens in a way to try to get power back in Barbie Land. And at the end, it could have tied everything together. And like, I would have forgiven a lot of the mistakes if they had said, hey, we realized that maybe Barbie Land wasn't equal for everybody beforehand. So instead of going back to the way things were, why don't we give, you know, the Kens some positions in the cabinet? Why don't we give the Kens some opportunities too, and like listen to your concerns? I think that would have been a really cool ending where everybody would have kind of had a character arc and been like, all right, cool. I guess they did have character arcs, but there would have been some change. Whereas now the message is, okay, now we're back to being in charge. Now it's all the Barbies in charge. And now we're president and Supreme Court again and all that stuff. The Kens are like, can we have some positions in the cabinet too? Like in the Supreme Court? And then the president's like, no, I can't do that, but we can give you some like lower level positions and you can work your way up over time. You can work your way up so you can have as many rights as women do in the real world, which didn't quite make sense to me because aren't there like at least 3 female Supreme Court judges now?
Don't make sense.
So it just feels like a lot of the modern feminist complaints I feel like are rooted in stuff that was happening in the 50s and 60s. It was a little whiny maybe. Like they had a whole monologue about how hard it is to be a woman, but I realized a lot of it's not just about being a woman, it's about being somebody who cares what people think. If you don't care what people think, then none of that really applies to you. So I understand that it might be a monologue for somebody who has anxiety or who does really worry about that stuff. I have to be pretty, but not too pretty. I have to be this and that. Or you could just not give a fuck what people think about you and find your people. Yeah, there's going to be people who think women should be this or women should be that. But like, why are you letting people hold you back because you care about what they think? Like if they're actually in your way, if they're putting laws in place that keep you from getting a job, that's a fight for feminism, I guess. But if it's just, oh, you don't think I can do this job, prove them wrong. I don't understand that. I don't know. So ultimately in the movie, I think if they had said, hey, we realized things need to change, and they had actually realized Barbie Land wasn't perfect before, but now let's take the lessons we learned from the real world and try to make things actually equal for people, I would have forgiven a lot of it. Because even when I saw the marketing for the movie, I was kind of like irked a little bit because it said Barbie is everything. He's just Ken. But if they had subverted that and shown that he's not just Ken and Barbie doesn't have to be everything, because Barbie's stressed out because she's like, I'm all these things, but I don't really know who I am and all that stuff. that could have been a really cool twist and I would have forgiven that. But it just feels like at the end, it was like, what was the point of that? I don't know. Some of the bits and jokes are really funny, and I do ultimately like the story. I would say if you like Barbie, if you have good nostalgia about it from, when you were a kid, or if you like Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, like the actors in the movie did a really good job. I think it was overall very funny. Kate McKinnon was very funny, and she sometimes hit or miss for me, but in this one, she was really good as weird Barbie, the Barbie that got played with too hard. But yeah, so if anybody's like, oh, this is trash, I don't agree with that. I don't think it was trash. I think it was just very preachy. Go see things for yourself, because there's plenty of things that people hate that I've actually really enjoyed. There's plenty of things that they really like that I didn't enjoy. So, do your own research, as people say and got mad about.